In the fridge or the freezer?
Freezer.
Okay.
Fridge.
Fridge. So I'm gonna put it in this bag and put it in the fridge.
Okay, you should be good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, members of the public and staff and council. Welcome to this Committee of Adjustment agenda. I guess it's a public meeting. That's what I'm reading off of here. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. Moved by Councillor Lang, second by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor? Meeting is opened. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or amendments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are none. We just have the 3 applications this evening.
Perfect. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4A, proposed zoning amendment, Framboise and Mines. Ms. Haley.
Thank you. I'm just going to pull up my presentation. Okay. Are you now able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you to the members of the public, and welcome to attending our meeting this evening. For members of the public that are participating by Zoom or by phone, you will be permitted to speak to your respective application following my presentation. Prior to speaking, please state your name and address for the record. To make a comment, please use the raise hand function and the chair will call on you. If you have registered to participate in the meeting by phone, you will be asked if you would like to comment on the application after the applicable presentation. So I'm now going to read required wording as per the Ontario Planning Act. This is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend the public meeting and/or make written or verbal representation, either in support of or in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry to the Ontario Land Tribunal, also known as OLT. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT unless there are reasonable grounds to do so. So I just want to make a comment before we get started. We do have 3 zoning amendment applications this evening. 2 zoning amendment applications are for properties that are located adjacent to one another and they share a common owner. You're going to notice that I have 2 different presentations. The presentations are almost identical because the properties are side by side. It's just I'm required to do a presentation per application in case we were to ever receive an appeal. Then I can say that we've actually reviewed each application with the public independently, and hopefully it's more clear to the public then. So I'm going to get started on our first application. This is known as the Framboise and Mines zoning bylaw amendment. The parcel of property is located at part of lot 38, concession 9 in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in South Glengarry, and is located on the east side of County Road 34, almost at the very north end of our township. So this is the location of the map. Where my mouse is the very north end of South Glengarry, which is the border of North Glengarry. And this is not very far south of Alexandria. Another common building in this location would be the Commonwealth building that's located on the west side. I think that's very known in the area and it's not too far from this subject property. So the area in the black is the property that we're discussing for this application. The subject property is 12.5 acres in size and is currently vacant. The property was recently created by consent, or what's known as a severance process. And the purpose of the consent was to create a lot that is to be used for a commercial use in the future. It's unknown exactly what the use will be at this time. And it was a condition of the consent approval to rezone the subject property from rural to a commercial zoning to be able to conform to the zoning bylaw. So the purpose of this amendment this evening is to rezone the subject property from rural to general commercial to permit a future commercial development. What I've done in this slide is I've listed the permitted uses that come from Part 7 of our zoning bylaw 3809. There's many different uses that are permitted in the commercial zone. And in this particular case, the applicant has asked for the zone to be a general commercial. It gives lots of flexibility for the parcel of property. I've provided a sample of all the different uses that are permitted in this location. I'm not going to review every one of these uses, but for the members of the public that are listening, and if you're curious, you could go to the township's website and view Part 7 of our zoning bylaw 3809. The permitted uses continue on this page. And again, I'm not going to read all of them. And then there's also the ability to permit a residential unit or a detached residential structure in the general commercial zone. And not everyone would take advantage of that. It's going to depend on what type of business chooses to purchase that land and move forward if the zoning amendment is approved. So the subject property is designated rural district in the county official plan, and the proposed zoning amendment conforms to all aspects of the official plan. Any commercial use would obviously have to conform to the official plan requirements. And if this is developed commercially, it will be subject to site plan control as well. The United Counties of SD&G, the Raisin Region Conservation Authority, have been circulated on this application, as well as all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. To date, I've not received any formal comments or questions. And the zoning amendment application will be subject to a decision of council. A staff report, including a recommendation, will be brought to council for a decision in the near future. And hopefully that's something I can do for our January council meeting. And I recommend to all members of the public, if they do wish to comment on this, to have their comments into our municipal office by Thursday, December 23rd at 4 p.m. And then we can take those comments into consideration before we write the staff report to council. And as I've mentioned, I've received no oral or written comments from the public at this time. So that's all I have for this application. Mr. Mayor, I am aware of the applicant's agent being Mr. Menard. He was planning on participating in the meeting this evening, so he may have further information to add, but I'm not sure if he will. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to Mr. Menard, are there any questions, members of council? Seeing none, Mr. Menard, if you want to go ahead and speak, just say your name and your address for the record. And
yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Andy Menard. My address is 1906 John Street in Williamstown. I represent Morris the Framboise and Jason Mine on this application. Mrs. Haley's comments are exactly what the application is for. We have nobody. We didn't put the property on the market, or it won't be on the market for a while. But what we wanted to do is to make sure that that portion of land was not going to be, if the official plan was going to be changed to agricultural, then it would have frozen that piece of land up. And I think that the township and the counties and the owners can see some future development there. It could be next year, it could be in 10 years. But anyways, it was that's what our intentions are, nothing immediate.
okay, thank you very much, Mr. Menard. Are there any questions of council for Mr. Menard? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just go back to sharing my screen. Okay, is it back on the right? Can everybody see it
Yep.
perfectly? Okay,
Yep.
great. So we're going to move on to the next zoning bylaw amendment. And this one's known just as the Framboise zoning bylaw amendment. You may have heard me mention earlier that we did have a common landowner between the two applications. So this parcel of property is also located at part of lot 38, concession 9, in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in South Glengarry, again located on the east side of County Road 34. So this area that's blacked out is the subject property, and it is directly north of the property that we just discussed. And the property that we discussed was just located in this section here. So this parcel of property is 10 acres in size and is currently vacant. It was also recently created by a consent or severance process. The purpose of the consent is to create a lot that is to be developed for commercial use. And again, it was a condition of the consent approval to rezone the subject property from rural to a commercial zoning. The application that was filed was to request a rezoning of the subject property from rural to general commercial to permit future commercial development. And again, here is the list of all the different commercial uses that could be permitted that's located in Part 7 of the zoning bylaw. Again, I'll encourage members of the public to view that section of the zoning bylaw. And this property is also designated a rural district in the county official plan. And it does conform to all aspects of the official plan, and the proposed development will have to as well. And as I mentioned, it will be subject to site plan control if there is development. And once again, we notified the United Counties of SDNG, the Raisin Region Conservation Authority, and all properties within 120 meters of the subject property. And I've not received any formal comments or questions to date. And we will be bringing this application to council in the future for a decision. It'll also include a recommendation, and we request that all comments be provided to the municipal office by December 23rd at 4 p.m. And again, I've not received any formal or written comments. So that would complete this presentation for this application.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Haley. This is actually, I was looking at that. This is a great area for commercial development. You know, there's not a lot around there, but but other commercial businesses. So it's good. Are there any questions or comments of council? Okay, Mr. Menard, did you want to speak to this one as well? I'm assuming not. It's the same application as the other one. So let me just check to see if there are any other participants who may have their hands up. I know there was three other folks attending. My apologies. And nobody else has their hands up. Okay, we'll move on to the next item.
Okay, so we're moving right along. It's very difficult to predict an appropriate time sometimes for public meetings, not knowing how long they're going to take. So I appreciate council meeting so early. So this application is a completely different application in a completely different location. This application is known as the Peters Dye Zoning Amendment. This property is located on part of Lot 24, Concession 1. It's in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in South Glengarry, and it's located at 18594 County Road 2. So this is a key map of the parcel of property. So this is County Road 2. The beginning portion of Pebble Point Road is actually a public road. This property has an address of County Road 2. And you can see that it definitely has a unique configuration. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in detail in the next couple of slides. So the subject property is approximately 7 acres in area. It's currently residentially developed, containing a single detached dwelling, accessory structures, and a septic system. Actually, and 2 septic systems, I apologize. And the applicant proposes to construct an attached garage containing a secondary dwelling unit. So now I'm going to show an aerial view of the property, and you can see where the existing residential development is. There's an accessory structure over here, and the accessory structure in this location is also part of the subject property because the property owner owns the private road in this location. So the purpose of this amendment is to rezone the subject property from limited services residential, floodplain holding, and provincially significant wetland to limited services residential exception 9, floodplain holding, and provincially significant wetland. and to permit a secondary dwelling unit with an attached garage ancillary to the existing primary dwelling unit located on a private road known as Prevost Point Road. I'm now going to go back to this slide. And so there's a section in this location right here that has a small portion of the provincially significant wetland. And then we have some floodplain in this location as well, simply because of the canal that comes in here. But the area where the proposed development is, the proposed garage is going to be in this location if it's permitted, which will contain the secondary dwelling unit. And just to be clear, the garage actually is permitted if we're seeking permission for the secondary dwelling unit. And so any of the proposed development is not going to be impacted by the floodplain or the provincially significant wetland because of how far away it is. And we've reviewed this with the Raisin Region Conservation Authority as well in pre-consultation meetings. So now this is a site plan that was provided to us from the property owner. This might be a little fuzzy to read, and I apologize. It's simply because I took a section of it from the scanned-in copy. So this area is the existing dwelling. These two hatched areas are the existing septic systems for the property. And then the area,
excuse me, Miss Haley, I don't see your mouse moving at all when you're referring to it.
We're on the presentation frame where we can see the next slide coming up.
Oh, jeepers, mine isn't showing that at all. Okay, let me see if I can get out of that. I'm sorry. And you know what's throwing me off is I'm working on two screens. So that's let's see if I can get over. Was it like that for the other applications?
Nope.
No, just this one.
Okay, well, let me see if I can change that. It's not letting me. I'm having problems with my mouse now. We might have to continue in my in the format I'm in. I'm trying to move it over here. My goodness. Okay, I'm just going to continue this way if
That's okay.
if you don't mind, just because
Yep.
yeah, my mouse isn't cooperating due to my next screen. So I'm going to try and describe it best without using my mouse. So you'll see an area that's highlighted in light gray, and in the wording it says existing house. And then you're going to see two squares on either side of the structure that have lines in it. And they are the existing location or approximate locations of the septic beds. As I mentioned, there's two septic tanks on this parcel of property. And then the area that's in a hatched area that's a thicker hatching is where the proposed garage is going to be located. And it's to be located 6 meters off of the front property line. So the subject property is primarily designated a rural district with some small areas designated provincially significant wetland. As I explained, the zoning has that as well. And then there's the portion of it that's in the residential district of the county official plan. And the proposed zoning amendment conforms to the official plan. The United Counties of SDNG and the RSCA have been circulated on this application, as well as all properties within 120 meters. And I've not received any formal comments to date. I'm just going to go back to the slide where it talks about the purpose of the zoning amendment. So for members of the public or for members of council, when we wrote our secondary dwelling unit bylaw, we did not allow for secondary dwelling units to be located on private roads and located within a limited services residential zone. The reason for that is because not all private roads are in really great locations, in great standards, and are properly wide enough to accommodate emergency service vehicles. So it was discussed with council and with administration that it was best to look at any types of these requests individually to see if it was something that we can do. You may recall we've had two other applications before this one on private roads where applications have been approved for secondary dwelling units. And at that time, they've been reviewed by fire services and things like that to make sure that they're in locations that can be accessible. Because as you know, we have some private roads that are very tightly developed on very small parcels of property that it's not easy to access them. And this property would definitely be an anomaly for our private roads, given the size of being, approximately 7 acres. So that's why the purpose of the application is to seek permission to have it in the limited services zone and located on a private road. And so same as the previous applications, we will be bringing a staff report with a recommendation to council for a decision. And we do request that all comments be submitted by December 23rd, 2021 at 4 p.m. And that's all I have for this, Mr. Mayor. I know our applicant is available, and he can answer any questions if council has any. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haley. This is the old senior day away place, I believe, many years ago. And I think that's why there's the second septic system at the back.
You're very correct on that, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Okay, and it's quite high there. It's like the highest point in that whole point when you drive in there. Okay, are there any questions of members of the committee? Seeing none. I'm assuming it's Mr. Peters. Did you
Yes.
want to speak, Mr. Peters? If so, just state your name and your address for the record and go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mayor Warden. Thank you very much. My name is Patrick Peters. My residential address is 18594 Prevo Point Road. Yeah, I don't have much to say other than you're right. This is the highest point, the highest house in the point. It's the first one when you enter the point, so access to the home, to the dwelling is quite direct, quite easy. And the purpose is to have a secondary dwelling just to make the house bigger, but because of the way it's being built, it may be considered a secondary dwelling. So I just want to take the right approach, let's say, cross the T's, dot the I's, make sure everything is done well and properly, and get this rezoning approved. So I appreciate the chance and the opportunity.
No worries at all. It's best to have that zoning done, and for resale, you'll be able to sell it with the accessory unit.
Right.
Okay, good. Thanks for those comments. Are there any questions of the committee to Mr. Peters? Okay, seeing none. I guess that's the end of our public meeting for this evening. Is there anything else to add, Ms. Haley? You're on mute.
I have nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. And sorry I scheduled it so early, not knowing how long it was going to take. And we were also thinking maybe we'd have a committee of adjustment meeting as well after, but that didn't work out either. So sorry about that.
No worries. When I started the meeting, the header of this agenda says Committee of Adjustment. That's why I had said those wording, and then realizing it was a public meeting. So thank you all for attending, and we will see you just over an hour for a regular council meeting this evening. And Merry Christmas for those that are